Deep beneath the earth of ancient Hyrule lived a race completely forgotten by history, and that is the Mogmas. My name is Saturn. Welcome back to another one of my videos where we discuss Legend of Zelda theories that Nintendo has not clarified. And in this episode, we're going to talk about an ancient race that we don't know what happened to them. Who are they? I mean, we kind of know who they are if you play Skyward Sword, but like, who are they? Where did they go? There are so many ways to describe the Mogmas. We can see that they're treasure hunters, that they're excavators. They're creatures perfectly adapted to volcanic heat, probably lack of oxygen underground. And they did thrive beneath the Eldin Volcano during the era of Skyward Sword. But then something strange happened where they just, disappeared. They vanished. Usually one race will descend into another race and another race and another race as time goes by and there's evolution, and with them there has not been anything at all. They lived side to side with the Gorons, which means that they couldn't have evolved to Gorons. And another strange thing is that they were not mentioned in later games, or I guess later eras. That you don't hear from them at all after Skyward Sword. And another weird thing is that they don't even have settlements like all of the other races have. I mean, even the bokoblins have settlements that they kind of make, even though they're like nomadic goblins. These guys didn't have any settlements. They just disappear, and you'll find like random grottos underground and you'll find them there. And in later games, you don't find them underneath Death Mountain, which wouldn't make sense if they were found there because they were thriving under the mountains. So it is a mystery, and one question is, like mentioned earlier, what happened to them? Did they go extinct? Did they leave Hyrule? Or were they competing for resources and slowly replaced by another mountain species, perhaps the Goron? I will say that the Mogmas are one of the most strangest races that Legend of Zelda or the Zelda lore has ever introduced us to. So in the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, they inhabit underneath Eldin Volcano, and they spend most of their lives digging tunnels and searching for treasure and surviving dangerous volcano terrains beneath and above the earth. And unlike many Zelda races, I will say that the Mogmas kind of feel fragile in a sense. Like, if you've noticed in Skyward Sword, they're constantly hiding from monsters. They're constantly nervous. They kind of hide behind Link most of the time. And I kind of wonder how would they be able to survive after Link if they were barely surviving before Link, since the race seems to be a small amount of survivors, you would say. There is not that many Mogmas in the game. It seems like the Mogmas were more trying to survive underground than trying to dominate their environments, which is crazy with how buff their upper bodies are. But that detail might be really important because if you look into the future Zelda games, again, there's now a new race that's taken over the underground, the surface, basically the entire volcano area. Across multiple Zelda eras, the Goron seem to be the one race that dominates not only the Eldin region, they seem to dominate Death Mountain and basically any terrain that has a volcano or lava. In Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, in Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, in Breath of the Wild even, and beyond. Sometimes the Gorons may be warriors, but most of the time they're excavators, they're traders, they're miners, and they are blacksmiths. And unlike the Mogmas, the Gorons do not hide underground. So at some point, Death Mountain, which felt like Mogma territory, became Goron territory. Because if you remember, originally, there was 3 Gorons just traveling around, just looking around Hyrule. Then you have the Mogmas who dominated the mountains and the volcano And it seems like it's not the case anymore. Now it seems like not only they're completely gone, but those 3 Gorons established themselves there and brought the entire race, and now they are the ones who are thriving. So this is where my theory begins. What if the Mogmas did not disappear instantly? But what if they were slowly, let's say, outcompeted? Because hear me out. If you compare both species, the Mogmas are smaller, they're more timid, they're isolated, they're scavengers, and they're pretty much dependent on the underground light. As for Gorons, they're massive, they're physically dominant, they're lava resistant, they're socially organized compared to the Mogmas, if you remember, and they economically integrated themselves into Hyrule, which the Mogmas have not. So the Mogmas are more like a civilization that is surviving, while the Gorons are a civilization that is thriving and expanding. And I think because of that, the Mogmas were simply outcompeted and died out. Or maybe they just left Hyrule in general to find themselves a place that's a little bit less hostile, and let's say a place that doesn't have as much bokoblins as Hyrule does. Now, if you go back just a little bit, the disappearance of the Mogma is a little bit strange, because ancient civilizations don't just disappear and not leave anything behind. Like the Zonais left ruins, the Sheikahs left their technology, the Twilight left their artifacts, and the Minish became legends. But the Mogmas, there's nothing. And there's another unsettling detail that most players don't notice. In the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, have you noticed that there has not been any young Mogmas around? But if you play other games where Gorons are involved, you'll find young Gorons. The Mogmas have not only no Mogmas, there are no families, they just seem to be a bunch of friends surviving. Almost like it's the final last batch of them. And that's another indication that there is not going to be any expansion for them in the future. All this combined with their nervous behavior, constantly hiding, and the absence in future Zelda games, and the absence in future Zelda history, it raises the disturbing possibility that, unfortunately, they might have disappeared during the events of Skyward Sword. And we might have actually been witnessing the final era of the entire race. Now, there's a possibility that Mogmas may have left Hyrule instead of extinction. Now, hear me out. You have certain races that have evolved over time throughout the Legend of Zelda history. You have, for example, the Kokiris that evolved into Koroks, and even at some point, there is a theory that they may have originally been Koroks turned to Kokiri back to Koroks. And another theory that their lost children, who became part of the forest, became Kokiri, and now they become Korok after the Great Flood event. And you also have the Zoras during the Great Flood, where the waters were pretty hostile, so they were turned into Ritos, which are now the flying species, right? And even the Zoras, there's a theory that they came from the race called Parella that you find in Skyward Sword in Lake Floria. So perhaps the Mogmas did adapt as well, like the other races, except that they did not stay in Hyrule and they decided to completely run away like the cowards that they are. No shade, just stating facts. There's even a possibility, though I do doubt that one, that the Gorons took over the surface and some of the subsurface areas, and that the Mogmas decided to run as far into the surface as possible. But I'm not sure if they're able to survive lava the way that the Gorons are, so it's a little bit far-fetched, but it's still a possibility out there. Ooh, this is a good one. So in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, if you go to the depths area, you actually find these statues of these, I would say like wolf-like creatures, but they're built like Mogmas, where they have this like massive like triangular upper body and these little legs. So there's some speculation that the statue might actually be one of a moblin, but it also looks a lot like a Mogma. So that's another possibility that maybe they did survive the depth. But then again, the timeline is so different from the Skyward Sword line that I'm not sure if that could be correlated, but that is a possibility as well. Okay, please don't hate me for this one, because I was just playing Minish Cap recently and I noticed that the Acro Bandits really look like Mogmas, which is actually what got me to make this video. It's the uncanny resemblance between both races. So what if the Mogmas were tired of being bullied? Now hear me out. Minish Cap comes right after Skyward Sword, right? What if they were tired of being bullied and they just became villains? And they just hang out in a group and just attack Link whenever they can as the Acro Bandits. Acro Bandits burrow underground, they attack travelers, they like to steal treasures, and visually look just like Mogmas. Oh my god. And you know, Mogmas, they have that mask on their face that looks like a bandit. So now I'm thinking like, maybe they finally evolved into these enemies, and maybe after Minish Cap they realized that, you know what, the enemy life is just not for me, and then they vanished. So maybe they became Acro Bandits, maybe they got extinct, maybe they just cowered away and left Hyrule. All I can say is that we don't hear back from the Mogmas ever again. We don't even find any traces of them except for that potential trace in Tears of the Kingdom. But outside of that, it's just one of those races that came into the series and then disappeared from the series. Nintendo, please. Also, they're not the only race that just appeared and disappeared. There's quite a few, and one of my next videos is going to discuss probably one of my favorite ones. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any ideas of what could have happened to the Mogmas, please let me know below. Also, if you have any suggestions, I would love to hear that as well in the comments. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!